One of the things I wanted to talk about is Jeremy really hit on a point about OPC and the life, and one of the things he hit about is that whole concept of how your children, you know, and you joked a little bit about it, but we've come to a whole different world now. I mean, if you think about how intelligent our children are and how electronically savvy they are, unfortunately, they're a lot smarter than us. They know how to use all these intelligent tablets, and they know how to use all these devices far more proficiently than we do. And this is part of my whole premise about the importance of interoperability and the importance of, you know, being able to buy products from a multitude of vendors and have these things really work on a plug-and-play, very secure scenario. So with that, and we've talked a lot about security between all of you, so I got a bunch of questions. But I'm going to let the audience ask the questions first, because then I'm going to put you guys on the spot. So, okay. All right, take one from the back of the room over there.
Hi, it's Blaine Tukey from BP. The SABIC example, where you've put in the one-way data diode, will clearly prevent attack from external sources. So what else did you do around the physical access to the system and people putting in USB keys and other attacks that won't come from a remote software attack?
Well, that was basically they had to redo their entire policies. So they're not allowed to bring USB keys now without going through a kiosk. They've installed a couple kiosks that do scanning. It actually has 2 USB keys. So the one coming in, anything you want to transfer gets scanned, virus scanned, and then transferred to the clear key, and that's the only key that's allowed to go into the plant network. So there is no connectivity between the two networks. And then, you know, there were a couple firewalls, supplementary firewalls, software firewalls placed around in the diagram. But for the most part, it's a strict USB keys. Only clean keys are allowed in the plant network, and no connectivity inside.
Okay, don't be shy. You got a lot of burning questions, I'm sure of it. Oh, Craig, right in front of us. Go over here.
I'm Sandy Chopala from Dolphin Energy, UAE. Again, for the SABIC example, I would like to know from you, there are perimeter firewalls, which does the same kind of work as the data diode. So what additional advantage or diode would help? Okay,
so what we do is we actually have a total protocol break at that point. And then there's a physical separation, so we actually convert to optical technology, a one-way optical technology, and then reconstruct the packets on the other side with actually no information from the sending network. All the IP addresses, everything else are stripped away. So you can't gain any knowledge of one network from the packets forwarded onto the second network. So there's a protocol break, and then there's that physical separation. And the protocol break, you can do that in software, but it's really that physical, electrical optical conversion that makes the hardware solution more viable than the software solution.
Hello, Pablo Barabale from YPF, oil and gas company from Argentina. What is your solution when you have your engineers to get support from the remote support from the outside world?
Well, in this particular case, they don't have that model where they need remote access. But we have had situations where we have needed that, in which way we do a 2 one-way. Whereas the inbound is very carefully filtered. All the packets are very carefully filtered. And so we do a profile of packets that are allowed to pass over the diode. But obviously, 2 one-way is 2-way. So it's not preferred, but we have done that in the past.
they're all quiet out here. They're debating on, how they're getting back to the
Yeah, I
East
didn't mean to
Coast
scare
with all
everybody.
the snow and everything. So, I guess I have a couple questions that I went through. First off, I want to pick on Jeremy first. He's been picking on me at least a couple times today, but let me start with Jeremy. I guess one of the things I want to talk about is there's a lot of legacy systems probably that are part of John Deere. And I guess I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about your migration strategy and how you're pulling a lot of these legacy devices and applications together?
Sure. So we have a lot of gauges and a lot of serial one-off type systems that are still out on our shop floors. And so rather than throwing all those away and going to new devices, which for the most part in that field is still a serial device or a USB device, we have serial port servers that they're readily available. We use Digi, I think, for the most part. And then Kepware has a user configurable driver where you can replicate that serial communication, feed it right over the Ethernet, right into the OPC server, and you cut out having to go through the computer itself. There are times, though, that you have to get a little creative. So you read the manual of the device, and sometimes things are left out. Wireshark is a great tool to help piece it together, and then calling the vendors, or a lot of times I call Kepware, and they help me out as well. So piecing all that together is how we get all those old devices and can still keep them communicating.
Okay. Thank you very much. Patrick and Kevin, I don't know which one of you guys want to answer this, but I guess I'm wondering, you talked about security. What was the impact of, in terms of investment cost to start really securing this, and what do you think the maintenance is that, they have to go through basically to implement, some of the security stuff you talked about? I'm putting you on the spot, I think, but.
Yeah, no problem. As far as additional investment, they were able to leverage the Kepware OPC servers and some other OPC servers that the vendors had already made both DA and UA compliant. So to shift to UA, it didn't require any additional investment, just the time to learn how to implement the technology. And really, that wasn't much of a challenge either. I almost hired Jeremy's kids to come out and do it for us.
They're still cheap.
Rob?
Yes.
I've seen a lot of things happening right now where, insecurity, a lot of things, there's a lot of, I'll call it sensationalism basically about different problems that are occurring. Sometimes it seems to be it's like all firewall related, but I think it's a lot more than that. I guess, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, beyond the typical things that you do in a firewall, with respect to your products or guidelines that, many, like the fertilizer company did or should be doing, did they put some things together that went beyond that?
They did. They supplemented with software firewalls, and software firewalls are fine. It's just over time, the maintenance, maintaining the software, you've got a constant group in the underworld group that's constantly trying to find ways through a software firewall. So they work as great supplements, and but the only real way to truly safeguard, isolation really is the only true way to truly safeguard network separation. And like I said, the physical separation really is supplemented by software. But when it comes down to it, if you stripped all the software away, you really, there's no physical way to communicate backwards. And I understand that that's just not practical in a lot of applications. But for a lot of applications, it's really the only way to have 100% or close to 100% security.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So we have more questions to the audience. I hate to, steer the whole thing. Now I got a couple people thinking.
Yeah, this is Dennis Zetterberg with Chevron, and question for Rob. If you did an analysis of what they had there at the facility, right, in terms of the latest concepts of ISA 99, in terms of zones and conduits, and had their system been sort of ISA secure, ready, I guess, which is what we're trying to promote and all that, do you think that would have prevented the attack? Or, I mean, you just mentioned about air gapping, right, which is kind of going the old way of saying, okay, just keep it air gapped, but
Right.
that's not what we're looking for, really, because we are going to have connectivity. So do you think following those standards, zones and conduits and all that goes with that, would have prevented this from occurring, or not? What are your thoughts?
Well, to be honest, we didn't get a full, we have an idea of what the network looked like, but they didn't show us a lot of what they had at the time. So a true, real root cause, they were a little bit secretive in that, maybe embarrassed, maybe. So I'm not sure how closely, they regarded those type standards before. So it's difficult for me to answer that.
So with you not knowing the problem, how do you really solve it?
Well, when you have a bulletproof
obviously you came
solution.
up with some solutions, but unless when you go see a doctor, the doctor's going to diagnose what your root cause is and solve the root cause, right? So I'm a bit confused, but I think I understand where you're coming from. You probably
I understand what you're saying. I don't know if you've been to the doctor lately, but they don't really do much root cause anymore. They don't do much culturing, none of that. You know what it is? It's a Z-Pack, and it's if it doesn't work in 2 weeks, then then we know it wasn't it wasn't that. So, but I understand what you're saying. But truly, when you have a solution that really is a hard way enforced one way, it's pretty much a cure-all for that particular situation of network isolation.
Another question over here.
My question is to Jeremy. This is regarding OPC basically. So the first thing I'd like you to explain to us any differences OPC, DA, AE, and UA. And my next question is OPC now is getting into the control network. And of course, between like OSI and DCS or a SCADA system, we have no issue, it works fine. But when it comes to using OPC, either connecting a UCP package, unit control PLC package, or an ESD system, we have our own fears, and I think we had a little bit bad experience as well. So with respect to the control environment, where both-way communication especially, and also the steel plant, what they have done, I think HMIs, if you are trying to send some control points from HMI to the control, how secure they are with respect to the data integrity, that would not give any upset to the plant. So are such problems, I think we used earlier OPCDA, we had some problems on the ESD network like that. Maybe UA is solving that. Can we directly go and use it in the control environment like that? Also, if it is being used with an ESD fire and gas system, is it certified?
So I don't know that I can speak to the specific system you're talking about. These guys might have to help. But as far as OPC, DA, and UA differences, I've been able to, with the equipment that we use, hook most everything up to OPC DA. There are new devices coming and are out there readily available that have a UA server built in. And so really for John Deere, the benefit of OPC UA to us today is that we can then integrate those UA servers out at the device right into our same kept server platform. That way all our data communication to MES systems and data collection are through the same source. It just streamlines things for us. It does add another layer, in those cases where UA is already out at the device, but it makes it a lot easier for us to troubleshoot, and it keeps us standard, which is really, really important for all the different manufacturing facilities we have. So I don't know if that answered your question. If it didn't, ask it again.
So, right. So I think part of your question was about operators or unauthorized operators potentially disrupting the process, and if OPC helps with that. There's actually several places where that can be addressed. On the control level, you can control read-write access and make tags read-only. At the OPC layer, you can do the same thing with defining tags as read-only. If it needs to be a read-write tag, at the application layer, we're able to implement security where only specific users, or maybe only specific users during specific shifts, can write data to specific points. So I hope that answered your question.
The security server that we used in that project actually can get very granular. You can do it on multiple layers. So you can do it not only with using Active Directory with what you're using from the company itself, but then you can also take that, create users in groups, and actually define down to a single point level per user, per group. So you can get very granular on your security. I think having that security server is very important, or one like that is very important to securing your process control.
Jeremy, do you want to add something? Okay, all right.
No, they answered it perfectly.
Thank you. Other questions, sir? So I actually have a couple more. I want to know what specifically, what's the plans, Patrick or Kevin, for, beyond Skate and HMI with respect to them? Are they looking at, using the technology beyond just visualization at the SCADA level?
Yeah, so currently we are using some of that data on the MES level, and even some of it gets fed up to the ERP where that quality data gets delivered to the customer. We are just having discussions now about having complex objects, or the use of complex objects, and how we could leverage that in relating that product data to all of its process parameters that have been historized, that have been logged, and how we can create objects based on that.
A batch ID.
Yeah, like a batch ID, and that object would then have access to all of the data points for that finished product.
Jeremy, you mentioned wireless. I'm just wondering about what recommendations you had from a John Deere perspective with wireless solutions that John Deere has used.
Yeah, so we have a lot of gauges on the shop floor, like Mitutoyo micrometers, the handheld gauges, and a lot of times a wire means a trip hazard, or it gets cut pretty easily, and so you have to have a lot of spares. We found a company called Micro Ridge Wireless, and they have the ability to hook up to most any of the serial communications from Mitutoyo, Marfederal, all the different gauge companies. Today, you still need a serial port converter, but they are working on Ethernet solutions so that we can cut that out. But then we feed it right up through Kepware and right into our MES and data collection systems.
Rob, all these wireless tablets that are out there, you got all these different things now where people are trying to potentially use these as, connecting up and visualizing things, or the smartphones. how do you see that working with, like the OWL products, or, is there any use of that in,
Well, the encryption of the wireless signal obviously is the most important part, and then and then segmenting the wireless access points at the correct spots in the network topology is really important. We are seeing more and more use of wireless, and it really is encrypting those packets point to point, which is really because you can't. I mean, there are a lot of movements towards dialing in the power of the signals so that they're really contained. There are also some jamming technologies where the perimeter, they'll set up jammers along the perimeter to limit how far the wireless signal can penetrate. But it is, it's in the air, so it's yeah.
That's an appropriate thing. Other questions, Mer? I got another one for Jeremy. I like this whole tag naming concept. And can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, how did you guys decide to start doing this thing? And does your naming convention proliferate across vendors and different equipment you use?
Yeah, so our naming convention really came from deploying MES globally and having a factory startup in China and needing to be able to support that from the US, but we didn't have the factory automation expertise at the time in China. So we started looking at how can we really be effective and can we apply that everywhere. So we have a pretty simple naming convention that starts out with what location. So that way when I connect remotely, I immediately know what factory. It's a 4-digit code that is unique across John Deere, so I can quickly go look in our SAP system and figure that out if I've not seen that one before. We then drill down and we use underscores in between each section. Drill down in and define what type of a device it is. So we use a lot of Allen Bradley products, we use a lot of Siemens, and so it's pretty easy to define standards on how we would name those so that you easily know what you're communicating to. And then inside the PLCs, we've defined standards on how we do our communication. So there's already a standard defined for that we just adapt right into our naming convention and pull it in. And we do that at the channel level. We then drill down one more into the device level. Inside of where we configure MES, channels and devices are separated out. So we want to make sure that if you're just looking at all the devices, you still have a good reference of where you're at. So we do some redundancy. Unfortunately, it makes the tag name a little longer, but it helps the end user overall. And then from there down, the tags themselves are all standard. So I have an Excel spreadsheet that I've created with a macro behind it that will generate a CSV file, and we can immediately import it. They tell me how many devices they're gonna apply, and I import it right into the KEP server, and we're up and running in a matter of seconds, literally.
Very good, thank you. Okay, any other question? I can keep picking on these guys for a long time, but they might want to pick on me then too, so. So from you guys talked about redundancy too, I guess. What can you say about how difficult was it to do the redundant solution you guys put in place? And what were the lessons learned from that?
No, it wasn't. The biggest challenge is, so with this particular project, you saw that they were initially maintaining, just at the caster, they probably had 12 to 15 HMIs that they were trying to maintain files on. The redundant system, they really like that architecture, but they find it convenient to develop just one system, but then when the behavior challenges that comes along with that is you have to keep those synchronized, the two redundant systems. And so we have a couple different tools in place to help synchronize graphic files and databases that did come into play after the fact.
I don't have a microphone, but I was going to say.
Take mine.
One of the things I was going to add about redundancy is we actually had a talk about this the other day with the Kepler guys is you have to define what does redundant mean to them. Mm-hmm. And that goes for basically all aspects. You know, I want a report, but they can never tell you what report, you know, what the report's supposed to look like or what it's supposed to have on it. You know, so defining redundancy, what does it mean? Are we taking it down to a point level, to a PLC level, to a data server level type of thing? That's always a challenge to determine how you implement, what you can implement, what you can do is getting some sort of a scope and definition of what they're looking for.
Okay, thank you. I guess each one of you get the opportunity here. So what are your closing thoughts with respect to, you know, lessons learned or, you know, things you'd want to tell your suppliers about what they could do to make your job easier?
I'll start.
Okay, you got the mic? Yeah.
I'm a sales guy, so I like to talk about that type of thing. You know, that's my favorite thing. So, you know, we've always built on an OPC-based system. So by having an OPC-based system, we talk about the interoperability, the ability to choose best of breed, the future-proofing of your system. And those are some of the foundations that we put into place when we're talking with someone about a solution and what they're trying to create, and we build on those standards first. And then from there, we branch out and start defining the scope of the project and what they're trying to do. But I think the interoperability, future-proofing, and best of breed really kind of lends its way. Now that the specifications of OPC UA bring in the security aspect as well, it makes for a very compelling argument.
Yeah, I agree with everything that he said. Really, from the vendors and me working with end users, I try to work closely with them to try to understand the needs of the end user and go from there. Whether it's through new product development or determining what existing technologies need to be used for a given project.
I guess I would like to challenge the end users in the audience to make sure that you go back to your companies and let them know that interoperability is here. I heard it in multiple sessions that we need one communication standard, and we have OPC here. That's what OPC Foundation built, was a set of standards that's available for that interoperability from all the vendors. So, and the only thing that I would add is that we do need to define what the three-letter acronym for OPC is, because I get asked that all the time. What is OPC?
John!
They do not buy that it just stands for OPC now. So.
That's a good one. Maybe we'll do a contest on that one.
Yeah, we'll have a Name the OPC contest. Well, from my perspective, OPC interoperability has really made it easy for us to gather all of those data points and pass them across our hardware solution and replicate on the other side. It really has building our OPC servers and then being able to communicate with the diode and then go ahead and talk OPC on the other side has really made a great solution in that regard.
I know Tony over there has a burning question.
Yes, I do. So I guess for the whole panel, as a vendor, we've been very excited with OPC UA. We see it as bringing to the market a very robust security model. I guess the one concern we've had as a vendor is how end users would be able to handle certificate management. That's been our concern. So I guess, as an end user that's actually had to do that, do you have any feedback for vendors and for the OPC Foundation on, do we need to make that easier going forward, or?
The feedback I've had from some of my customers is it varies from customer to customer to customer. Everyone has a different policy. Everyone has a different belief in what they need to do. So I don't have any feedback that would be intuitive for you guys at this time, other than I could put you in contact with some folks who have different concerns, but they all vary depending on how their architecture is set up and what they're doing.
So Tony, I've done one OPC UA implementation at Nucor on that project. So though the implementation was easy, I haven't systematized the management of certificates, and I would like to learn what other best practices are out there in the industry related to your question.
And I don't use a whole lot of OPC UA at this time. I'm still we use Microsoft for pretty much everything in John Deere, so DA is already there, and I like DCOM. I'm one of the few, I know, but I do, so I don't have a problem there. But the devices, I think where UA really shines for me are those new devices that are coming out from vendors that have the UA server built in, and managing certificates for those is pretty easy. If I think about managing UA certificates for everything, I would have to then think, how would I architect that? That is a very good question, and I'm not sure how I would do that yet.
We're really excited about OPC UA because we are inside the die. We actually have 2 Linux-based servers. So if you saw in the architecture, we actually have the Windows flanking servers only for the DCOM. So we're really excited. We're in development on a native Linux UA, but so we haven't really reached the certificate implementation level yet. But
All right. Well, any last burning questions from anyone? I'm going to dodge and answer that, Tony. Well, I guess on behalf of the OPC Foundation, I really want to thank all these speakers for taking time out and really helping, doing a much better job evangelizing the OPC technology than I can even dream of doing. So on behalf of them, I'd like to give a warm round of applause for the time they've dedicated.